the course is really based on my lived experience. And a big part of this mini course and the larger course was, thinking about, as I was moving through my management, leadership, career journey, just getting like a lot of not very useful feedback, or getting feedback but not knowing what to do with it, right? So when I was a manager, then I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that thing I complained about with my managers, and had been very thoughtful about how to be a better manager than the ones I had before me, and then cherry pick what was really working and what I found really meaningful, and then combine it with the research that's out there. And so that's kind of the result. This is the result of that thinking and that doing. So I'm really excited to share. It looks like we have a mix of people who are current managers and then people who want to be managers. So I'm going to kind of mix it up and make sure it's relevant to everyone and what stage they're in. But I'm really glad you're all here. So Management Deconstructed. I am going to share my screen. And hopefully this works okay. Oh, hold on. And then I just want to make sure I can see people. I don't know how to see the chat. Now I'm realizing. Oh, no, yes, I do. Okay, here it is. Awesome. Okay, so I can see the chat. So you can actually ask questions in the chat, raise your hand. I can see all the things. If I'm not getting participation, I'm going to cold call people. So, I just got out of one of my courses at Columbia, and my students will tell you I don't care about cold calling. I will do it if the course needs it. So just be ready, guys. And just because your video is off does not mean I won't cold call you. So you've been all warned, and we will sit with the uncomfortable silence of people not answering my questions. Okay, so the first thing I think to just start off a discussion about management is that I think there's an idea that management is a promotion. Like, people want it. Ambitious, smart people want to be a manager because they see it as the next progression of their career, and that it is the promotion they want and deserve. They think it does usually make more money, but they think it's like some sort of, like gold star check box to kind of like go up and up and up. And in some ways that's true. Like, most people at the top of organizations are inherently managers. But the other thing I think people forget is that management is not just a checkbox of a promotion. Management is actually like a completely different job. It is not a slightly more senior version of the job you have. And I think that's like a first kind of misconception to get out of your head and move into as you want to go into this role, or as you kind of move into the first phase or the first version of this role. And I think as people who are managers for longer see this very clearly, is like, well, this has almost nothing to do with the job I was doing before. And there's actually very little overlap. So the simplest way I've always been able to explain this is that you're going often from being a maker, and I use this term broadly, it almost doesn't matter what role you're in, but so whether you're in product or engineering or finance, or like this works for every role, you are in the mode of doing, right? And what you are rewarded for as a maker is being extremely skilled and deploying those skills in the direction of business impact. It's all about doing and skills. And you every time you move up, you get praised for the skills you have. Wow, you're like so good at Excel, or you're so good at this coding language. You're so good at writing documents, right? And then because you're good at it, you're very good at making business impact. The major difference between a maker and a manager is that, yes, you're still chasing business impact and having impact on the business, but in this, the activity you're doing is no longer doing, you're now directing. So you are working through other people, and your impact is indirect. Like, you do not get to pull the toggle, flip the switch, and like see things happen. You have to do it through people. And the mode you are in is relational. And I think this is like the major difference between the two roles that it accounts for why so many people, I think, struggle when they're in the new role of manager. Okay, so then if you need another way to visualize the difference, here's like a model, like a mental model. I don't know what to call this exactly, but it's like a mapping of the relationships, talking about the relational difference here between a maker and the people around them, and a manager and the people around them. And like the main takeaway here, like you can like kind of try to read every word, is that there's just more people in the manager role that you are working with. Like just like the sheer volume of people that you need to interact with to do the job of manager is just much, much more. And the tasks are more diverse, right? So, okay, this is for the people in this room who are managers now, I would love for someone to just give me an example of like a person that as a manager, they need to talk to now that they didn't need to talk to when they were doing their job before. Just like who's a person in your universe that like you never interacted with before, and now you're like talking to all the time. And you're like, I can't believe I have to talk to this person all the time. I mean, I'm gonna call on people, but I'm actually not. If I do call on you, I'm not sure if you're a manager or not. All right, let's see. I saw somebody had been an IT manager before. KJ?
Yep, that's me.
Manager? Okay.
Not currently, but I'm kind of filling in. So I would say program sponsors are folks that I've been communicating with in planning meetings and sponsor update meetings lately that as a product manager and only a product manager, I had not worked with.
Yeah. So I think that's a good example of just like your universe expands and it expands in a very specific way. It expands around people, right? And it goes back to it being a relational job. All right. Okay, so in this little mini course, we're going to talk about the 3 building blocks or pillars of management. In the larger course, we dive really deep into each of these. Like each one is an entire day or two, or like week or two. But like I love to be super reductive and just like, you know, get a very complicated subject like management into like 10 words, right? And at the end of the day, when you are a manager, you're doing 3 things, and they're all very hard. One is driving individual performance. So you've got the people that report to you and making sure they're as good at their job as possible. 2, driving that individual performance, but in the context of a team. Not every manager does this. Sometimes I was a manager for a while for a bunch of different functions, but they weren't related to each other. It was just like a small organization. And I was the manager of the marketing team, the IT team, and like the strategy team. And they just like were not a real team. Like those 3 people did not work with each other organically. But I did have a lot of management responsibilities. That's one type of management, but there is the type where you're like a group product manager or the engineering manager of a bunch of people who are doing the same job. And so thinking about the unit as a functioning whole is its own driving team performance, right? And so that's its own type of work. So now this is a more complicated thing. You're coordinating your team, but also their peers and also your peers and your manager. So this is one of the harder parts of management, I would say, as opposed to just strictly one person at a time. And then the last part is nurturing the team as it grows and picking the right people to grow and augment your team as your goals become more complex, right? So this is kind of the 3 pillars. They're all really hard. I would say in some ways the hardest technically is probably the team performance part, but the hardest emotionally is the individual performance part, especially when you have people who are really struggling or you're in a kind of deflationary environment like a layoff or whatnot. So, okay, so I now want to shift gears a little bit. So I think that's like a good summary of like what the actions and activities of a manager is. But I think really the interesting part of management is how it is so different from what I think many people expect, right? So I'm going to go through a couple like myths and ideas around management that really hold people back, slow them down in their early years. But once like you realize what the truth is, I suppose, it's a huge unlock for the job, okay? So the first part I mentioned is like 20 million times already, is that it is a people-centered job. And I think there's a category of person who is very, very motivated and ambitious and is like all about getting the accolades and the awards and the praise. And they're like, okay, I'm going to be a manager and I'm going to have more opportunity to get more praise and awards and promotions. And what they realize is that all the things they were doing before to get those, it's just like they don't matter anymore. And now your praise comes from below, right? The success comes from the bottom up, and you have to fill that cup in a different way. And so I think for this kind of person, management can be a very tough transition. And a lot of these people don't stay in the job for very long because it's just so unfulfilling. And it is so hard to have the control that you used to have compared to when you're completely reliant on others to have the impact, right? Because it is so people-centered, the number one skill of a manager is communication. And so in the course, we have a huge one full week of just about persuasive communication, because it is so critical. I actually don't have it into this presentation, but I basically have this chart that's like, for every step on the ladder, the career ladder that you go up, communication becomes more necessary because the complexity of what you're trying to do inherently involves more people, right? So there's a lot of product managers in this group, and that's my background. And when you're a junior product manager, the kind of projects you get are probably, build an internal tool for a team internally, right? It's low risk, and you're probably not working with that many people, like just the folks who are going to use that internal tool. The most senior product people are like doing a global launch for this new product that's going to change the trajectory of the company. That is inherently going to, you're working with PR, you're working with legal, you're going to be working with multiple engineering teams, you're going to be working with multiple design teams probably, because that project is harder and riskier and bigger. It just involves more people. And so your ability to communicate with that diversity of people is just literally a necessity of the job. And so there's can go into this much more. And please ask questions, by the way, about what some of these things are. I'm happy to go backwards into the deck at the end or during. But I just cannot emphasize enough that communication is important. And many people, I think, that I've managed who wish to ascend to their next level or be promoted, they get frustrated that the communication part is holding them back. And it's like, well, I know what to do, but I can't, just because I'm not that good at communicating or making friends or building relationships shouldn't mean I shouldn't be promoted because I have all the answers. And it's just in the reality of things, it doesn't matter if you have the answers, if you cannot convince that laundry list of people that are involved to do what you think is right. And so it goes from being right is the most important thing to being right plus convincing everyone you're right as the next as the next level here, right? So I feel like this is not so counterintuitive, but is worth really putting a pin in it. Okay, this is the one that I think is going to blow people's minds. So great managers understand they've lost control. You are now the boss. It does not mean you are in charge of anything and that you have more control than before. I always show this a bit stylized calendar, but it's not stylized, it's real. In that a maker, your calendar looks like this thing on the left, right? You're you're doing stuff, you're working on your spreadsheets or your whatever tool you're using, and then you have one meeting with your manager and maybe a couple other meetings sprinkled through your week. When you are a manager, you have you're maybe I can eat lunch today, or maybe I can eat lunch without being on a call at the same time, right? And what I always say is does this look like the calendar of someone who's in control of their life? Of course not. And this is actually part of it. You are now at the mercy of other people because your job is other people, and you can control tools, Jira, Salesforce, whatever is you get complete mastery over that tool. You cannot do that with people, right? I'm just painfully accurate. So I think once people go into the management role thinking they're going to be the boss and in charge, but that is 6 months worth of unlearning that you're going to have to do, because what's actually happened is that you need to be even more responsive to people in the situation than you've ever been before. So this is, I think, a very important one, and that one that's a bit counterintuitive for a lot of people. Okay, I like this one. So in the course, I have a concept of goblins. Goblins, they're mindset goblins, and they're things, mental things that prevent people, mental mindsets that prevent people from achieving their goals, right? And I have a couple fear-based goblins. There's 5 goblins. This one, the arrogance-based goblins, so I call it the arrogance of knowledge and the arrogance of significance. So the arrogance of knowledge is people who are like, I know more than everybody, so I need to be involved in everything. Because if without me, without my knowledge, this thing will not happen correctly, right? And I think people who quickly ascend in their career often do know a lot. They are very knowledgeable. That is why they were given the trust to be a manager. But being a manager also, now you're in a space where like the problems are more complicated and the information is more nuanced. And that deep confidence in your knowledge is now a liability. And I always am, some of the more aggressive managers, the ones who are like kind of have this ability to alienate people, it's often because they suffer from the arrogance of knowledge. I would say this was my biggest goblin becoming a manager. Like, I know, like, I just know what we're supposed to do. Everyone just listen to me. And so it turns into a lack of investment in relationships and listening. So arrogance of knowledge, got to manage that. On the flip side, the arrogance of significance are people who like think they must be involved in every part of the process, right? These are your micromanagers. They're the people who think that this thing can't be done correctly unless they're involved. And so they must insert themselves in, not trusting the process and not trusting delegation. And so this is like the micromanagers of the world, this is who they are. And it's, once again, very easy to be this person when you were a perfectionist high achiever in the IC world. In the management world, can be devastating, right? You basically cannot build teams if you do not trust your teams because you believe you're important to the story. You're no longer the main character, right? All right, a couple more slides. And then, like I said, I would much prefer this being a conversation. This one, I don't know how many, have you guys ever worked anywhere that's like, our company is a family? I don't know, you can raise your hand or like put something in the chat. Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple people who have heard this phrase before. I think that there's no team or like workplace that's a family. And if it is, it's horrible. I mean, your families are like, a lot of families are dysfunctional, so I don't know why you would want it to be your family. But what I think what happens here when people start treating their teams as family is it brings up a lot of these ideas around loyalty, and there's a sense of loyalty to your family and an idea that they should give you loyalty. And I have always thought that work is like more transactional than family-like, and it's actually kind of unhealthy on both sides to think otherwise. And so I think managers who treat their teams as family and expect that in return often create dynamics where feedback cannot flow, where honest conversations about people's futures, which don't necessarily involve staying at the company for the rest of your life, where you like can't really leave your family. In work, that's not true. It's like really like every workplace is a pit stop in your career, right? And so for individuals to understand that and for managers to understand that just means you're going to have a healthier conversation overall. And so I always love I prefer the sports team analogy. I know it's kind of been said a lot if you're like on LinkedIn all the time reading doom scrolling LinkedIn, but I do think that's a better metaphor for what you're doing, because I don't think the sports team you're on, even professional athletes, is your life, right? It's who you are right now, and then you can be on a different team in the future. So I highly dislike this analogy. Yes, if someone, Brian, if someone says their company is like a family, I just run, just like drop the interview, get out of there, find another job. It's just usually, it can almost always breed an unhealthy relationship dynamic. Okay, fear of being disliked. This is a fear goblin. So on the flip side of like the arrogant managers who are always kind of in your shit, and telling you what to do and telling you that, you should know this and that because they know this and that. The other thing that's actually I find more common in new managers is that new managers are almost always too nice. They are hesitant to see that people are maybe underperforming. They can't even see it, because if they see it, it means they have to say something. And then even if they see it, they are very afraid of giving feedback. Or when they give feedback, they give absolutely garbage feedback that like is not clear and vague and makes people walk away with the impression that everything is fine. So this is, it's a totally human thing to not want to give feedback. It's actually super weird. Like, you don't give feedback in your regular relationships. But as a manager, it's very important. And I think the main reason most people do not give it enough is because of this fear of being disliked. So when I work with new managers, this is probably the thing that comes up the most and the thing we work on the most. And it's fascinating. Like, I had someone who reported to me, and she had a person on her team that was not doing well, and she had written a performance review for this person, and I had known that she was like on the verge of putting him on a performance plan. I read the performance review and I was like, are you promoting this person? Like, what's going on? Like, I thought you just told me that you were gonna maybe put them on a performance plan. And she had written the performance review in such a way that like you thought this person was doing amazing. I was like, okay, like, first of all, this is a legal liability. One, two, you are definitely like making it harder on yourself to help this person, right? Because if it's not clear to me that they need help and they need to take steps to help themselves, it's just never going to happen. And it came from a place of just being a very nice, likable person. This person just couldn't lean into that part, but she learned, she figured it out at the end of the day, right? Okay, this is my great managers understand their work environment is like Game of Thrones. That's dark. That's dark. We can talk about that. We should talk about that offline. That's very dark. That's kind of sad, but kind of true. Okay, let me see if it's okay. This one is one of the last ones. This one and the next one are related about fear of failure and fear of seeming incompetent. But I think the last thing is that the management role as a important role in the organization is hard. Like, it's actually I think the reason why managers are paid more and should be paid more is not because they're senior, and it's not because they've put in their years and they deserve this money. I think to do this job well is super hard because if you're doing it right, you are constantly putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. The number one being about feedback and really deeply telling the truth, even when it's the hardest thing to do. And most of the time, when something big in the world is happening and you need to transform your team or transform what's happening, it usually means you need to move in a bold direction that most people are very afraid to do. And it goes to these goblins, which are about failure and feeling incompetent. It's about just that hesitancy to do something that may not be guaranteed to go right. Once again, high-performing people tend to be perfectionists, and perfectionists tend to not want to do things where they cannot see the outcome, right? And so if you are unwilling to take a leap into a place where you are unsure of the outcome, you will likely never be doing things that are very interesting, and hence never leading your teams to somewhere that is truly impactful. And so if you are feeling discomfort just like constantly as a manager, I suspect that you're not doing it right. That's like kind of like when I'm coaching people and talking to people, it's like it is why it is an incredibly challenging role, but also very rewarding, right? So those two things come hand in hand, but also why I think it's usually more highly compensated than individual contributor roles, because you're taking on this tension between impact, bold action, but also compassion towards your team and the people around you. So that tension is just something most people don't want to naturally engage with. Okay, Last slide. It's just a repeat of the other slide. All of that is to say that management is like, forget that it's a promotion. It's the wrong way to think about this. Is a new role, and actually you're basically starting from the beginning in terms of learning new skills and new relationships that you need to build. And I think the world needs more and better managers right now. I think it's really interesting. The class I taught this morning was related to this, and we were talking about Gen Z. I don't know how many people are Gen Z, so I apologize if I'm talking about Gen Z like it's like foreign species in like the jungle that I don't understand. But we were talking about Gen Z and how their bar for what is acceptable work seems to be higher than Gen X and us like millennials who like would, I guess, take any job that was given. I was working 80 hours a week when I was like 22, and I look back at 22-year-old Allison and I'm like, you were an idiot. Like, why did you work that hard, right? But one thing I think that has fundamentally changed about the world is we talk about the gig economy, right? And how there's all these other options. Like you can create a consulting business about some very niche skill that you can develop, or you can go and be a TikToker who just talks about Excel. Miss Excel is an amazing TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but like I follow her on Instagram. Great Instagram follow. And so there are other ways to build a life and career now. And actually what it's done is it's put pressure on traditional jobs, because I actually believe the labor market and the hunt for talent is harder for managers. It is a tighter market because even like 10 to 20% of the workforce even dabbling in the gig economy means there is a perception of more optionality. And it's probably true perception. That just means managers have to step up their game, right? And to retain and motivate people such that they don't, like they can just quit and like go on Upwork and sell copywriting on Upwork if they want to. It really puts pressure on the management function to be better than it's been before. And moving up and stumbling through this role just isn't going to cut it anymore, I think, for organizations. So I really believe like something has fundamentally changed. And it's not just like, oh, these young people don't want to work anymore. I think like truly there's more optionality in the world, and good for them. Like I honestly am like Gen Z and their boundaries. I love it. I love it for them, and I love it for us. We have a lot to learn, the older people. But so this course is really like, I think nothing super new, but it is urgent now because of the way the labor market has been evolving. And I'm learning so much from my students, and I'm just like very excited about this course and that you guys are here. So with that, I think we have like 10 minutes for discussion, because I'm happy to go on any slide that you thought was interesting, go back. Because for me, this stuff is really raw and real, and it's changing as the market is changing. So I would love to hear from you guys what like surprised you, what is new to you, seems a lot of people are really leaning into the family thing. I'm into that. But I would love to hear, what you guys have to say and what is going on in the real world out there. So that's the end of the official spiel, but I think we've got like 10 minutes for discussion or more. So
strategic partnerships.
Could you go back to the slide with the 4 boxes?
the communication one.
Yeah. What was the form factor one?
Right. So this is almost like a preview of one of the modules in the full course. But the way I think about communication, so I'll just go through all of the boxes because the last one won't make sense, the explanation of the first 3. So the first thing I think when I think about persuasive communication in particular is part 1 is I think most people when they communicate, they lose the thread of like why you're even talking about anything. Like, what is the point of the thing we're doing? What is the point of our conversation? And so I know this is like a Simon Sinek, like, that's like the name of his entire empire, start with why. But like, it's like just true. Like if you don't know why you're saying anything or why you're doing anything, like you can't point yourself in that direction. That's part 1. 2 is I actually don't believe persuasion comes from being right. It's like, I mean, you have to be right at the core, but like most of communication and persuasion comes from trust, and is mostly built upon a foundation of a relationship. And I think like people think like when they imagine being better communicators, people like imagine themselves on a TED Talk stage, like giving it's like amazing charismatic speech and like graphics like shooting out and like fireworks in the air. I don't know. But in reality, in the workplace, most of the effective people are not giving TED Talk speeches. In fact, like people who give a lot of TED Talk type speeches, everyone's like, what are they doing with their time? Are they actually doing any work? And what you should be doing is building trust one by one with the people who have the ability to affect the outcome of whatever you're trying to do. So building trust, and like, so that is a skill in and of itself, is to spend, one, it's like recognizing that it's something worth doing and spending time on, and then 2, doing it, which it comes more naturally to some than others. The next one is kind of similar to what I was talking about with my direct report who like wrote in an incredibly unclear performance review. It's like, I think a lot of times because they don't want to seem rude or unkind, they just dance around the thing they're actually trying to say. So I think really focusing on just pure clarity and not like, what would you say if you were talking to a robot? Like what, and then start there and then decide what you need to do to then dress it up. But I think people start with the dressing and then forget what the actual thing they're asking for is. And then the form factor part is really about just, this is like, if you do 1, 2, and 3, you're already at like 90th percentile. Bucket 4 is like, okay, let's get you to 90th percentile of communication awesomeness, and to the 99th percentile means that you're doing things like reciprocity, right? So you're building trust in a way that's like, hey, if I help you, I'm investing in this, knowing that you're going to help me. And so there's a guy named Robert or Richard Cialdini, and it's like the 9. It's like he has this like framework around influencing, and so that's what this is based off of. So in the longer part of this course, you're going to be talking about the types of psychological tricks that influence people. So there's a very long book. I suggest not necessarily reading the whole book, but maybe a summary of the book. Is just like way too long, but it's a research-backed approach to what really influences people. But once again, like those are all, the other 3 boxes are prerequisite to those tricks, because it's like they're tricks on top of something else, right? They're tricks on they have to be tricks on top of a solid foundation, is what I would say. So it's why it's the 4th thing, and not the main. Great question. Any other slides?
Hey, Allison, I have a question. So thanks for the presentation, by the way. I really learned a lot. So on this slide, I see that you have the word management deconstructed, sort of like the name for this. And then on the lower left, you have it called as leadership deconstructed.
Mm-hmm.
How do you differentiate between a manager and a leader?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. So oh, I have a whole slide around this. Do I have time to grab it? I do. So you guys are gonna have to wait a second. Hold on. Okay, so I'm gonna stop share. All right, you're gonna have to give me a second because it's worth the wait. I mean, the as I looked for this, they are different, and I'm really glad you asked this question. Readings. I think this is the one. Okay, awesome. No, didn't take too long. Okay, so this is actually, I'm going off script. So this is actually the presentation from the first week of the leadership course. And something I thought a lot about, like, why would someone take a leadership course, right? And there's a couple of reasons. I like, after like kind of talking to a couple people and getting a sense of like why is there such a high demand for like leadership content in general? and you see, it kind of breaks down to 4 things. One is people just want to be more effective at their jobs. They want to do work better. 1, 2, they're like a visionary type of person. They want to they have some visionary idea they want to transform in the world. So these are your startup founders. These are the people that like have some like mission that drives them, and they're like they almost want to be an evangelist for an idea. They want to bring change. 2, 3 is they want to be managers. So they want to like ascend in their career, and they have a very specific vision of what that means. And like leadership and management are almost synonymous to these people. And then career is like, they just like, it's like very ambition focused. Like, I want to move up the ladder, right? And so in some ways, this is part of the answer to your question, right? So overall, there's like leadership, and you can just want to be better at doing good work, or you even could want to lead transformation, and it may or may not have to do with management. It's both a subset of leadership, but also kind of separate, because you can want to manage people, but never, and be actually quite good at it, and not want to be like an evangelist, a transformational evangelist. You know, they're just people in the world who are like out there talking about new ideas, like climate, but like these people should not be allowed to manage people, right? But they are leaders, because they are bringing new ideas, and they do have this effect of getting people to follow them. But they are like, they don't have the compassion or patience to be true managers. So I don't see them as like one leads to the other. They're kind of like Venn diagrams with some overlap and some not, right? And then just like a quick preview, like the way I always think about this is like, in leadership, there are different skills, or I didn't call them skills because it doesn't quite capture what they are, but superpowers. And each of the goals has a different combination of superpowers that are necessary. And I don't believe people need to be all of them. Like, I'll be honest, I have ascending in my career has never been a priority for me. So like some of the things in this are not, like, I just have never invested in for myself because it's not important to me. So I don't actually think, once again, it's like a progression. It's kind of more like a divergence, and you pick your own destiny. Does that help answer that question about the difference between the two? So I think maybe leadership is more of like an umbrella term, I would call it, and I would call management a subtype of leadership, but in the way that maybe people don't intuitively talk about.
Yeah, thanks for the answer. That definitely did help. Would you ever consider the word or the term coaching to be part of leadership or management? Is that one of your, is it one of the sort of a skill that a manager also has to sort of learn, is how do you coach your direct reports or even your indirect reports?
Yeah, so I think coaching, lost the chat. So if you're chatting with me, I can't see it. I think coaching is a necessary component of management. Like, you cannot be a good manager if you're not coaching also. But you can coach and not be a manager. You can be a peer. You can be completely outside of the industry, right? You can like just be a person who knows things about either how to get shit done or like the subject matter expert. But like, for instance, you could be a transformational leader and not really be a good coach. And I've definitely seen that before. Like, people who are like very inspirational in nature, they have big ideas that get people excited and want to follow them, but they are not good at leveling people up, right? So, but I do believe it's a requirement of management. It's a great question.
Awesome. Thank you.
Here it is. Okay, so I got the chat back. Considering, are you able to look back and identify moments in your career that indicated to you that being a manager would be something you'd enjoy? Let me think about that. So I think joy in true coaching can be a hint at that you will like management. I think actually a thing that could be a hint that you would like it is that you like to see others succeed, and you don't care if you succeed in the process. because that's actually a pretty important feeling to be genuinely helpful without getting very much in return is very hard for many people. Like they need to feel that validation very quickly. It's why like salespeople, I know there's at least one salesperson in here, by the way, that I know. You know who you are. Salespeople struggle to be sales leaders because you go from one extreme, which is like revenue generating, and you're completely bonused on your ability to perform like as in this like silo of one like excellence in performance. And then you have to move into like a service role, which is quite different from that. Whereas like product managers are already kind of like in this influencing kind of role where they're already very relational. And they have to, it's easier for them to make the transition. So it's like how much you like to help people, but I think there's nothing that can prepare you really for the stress of management, because I think there is a very much a part of the role that it's about managing the tension around business impact and the need and want to be compassionate to your team. This is very difficult. This is why managers, like, it's such a stressful job. And it's handling that tension. Really successful managers are very good at managing the ability to like be focused on business impact without being distracted by the need to be nice. And of course we should be nice, but sometimes that need to be nice is so distracting or so overwhelming that it creates a lot of emotional turmoil. And that's where like burnout of managers happens a lot. So I think that part is harder to see before you become a manager, because it's really, I haven't seen a way to replicate that outside of the management role, because the responsibilities just balloon in a way that can't be replicated, right? But I think genuinely wanting to help people and then being kind of good at it, and then truly feeling like you don't need to get anything out of it except that person succeeding, that's a pretty good indicator. That's one of the like pillars, I suppose. Okay, I think we're like over time. It's like par for the course for me. But if you have I can do like 1 minute of questions, or feel free to get the longer version of the course. There's a lot more there. And 2, like I'm happy if y'all want to like connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out, like that is lovely for me. And so, just let me know and I'm happy to do that. I know if you want more information, Madeline has dropped a bunch of links into the chat. I'm sure you'll be getting a bunch of emails as part of participating in the seminar. But I really appreciate the people who shared and asked questions. So it's always really good to see like what's going on in the real world, and like learning what's new and learning from other industries. I have we're all gonna have like a narrow view of the world. So it's very cool to see all the sharing. Cool. So like I said, connect with me on LinkedIn, keep in touch. And I hope, if you're interested, like there's more to this. And if you are interested, just like contact Madeline, contact the team, and we'll figure something out.
Thank you so much, Alison. I'm going to do a quick wrap up. I've put the link to the leadership course, your 11-week course, in the chat. If you're interested in joining the January cohort, it's got 11 weeks of video content from Alison, and you attend live weekly sessions to discuss topics, to go through homework. Sign up for the waitlist, because then you'll get discounts when we open the registration in a few weeks. Alison's doing a few more of these live sessions for you to give you a preview of what's coming up in her course. The next one's going to be December 14th on deconstructing vision and strategy. So I'll send you guys the Eventbrite registration for that one as well. It would be great to see you there and learn a bit more from Alison. If you've got any questions about the course or about anything to do with Gigantic, email me. I put my email in the chat here, and would love to see you in the course. Thank you all for joining us today, and a massive thank you for Alison again. We'll see you soon. I'll send you the recording. Bye, everybody. Thank you.